Which report? Okay, thank you very much. So, like I said, I want this to be as interactive as possible. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions in this session in particular. Um, so let's make it as interactive as possible. Some people say they have 1.1 experience, 1.5, which is fair. Can you kindly tell me what SQL stands for?
Structured query language.
Thank you very much. So SQL is structured query language. Structured query language. Um, let me just bring up a note. Okay, let me bring up my SSMS. One moment, okay? I just want to have this written down as we discuss. Like I said, today is just going to be discussion, and maybe within 1.5 hours we will finish for today. But moving forward, we would spend some time so that we can. Let me share my screen. Am I sharing screen?
Not yet.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes, yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. So basically, this is the management studio we're gonna use. There are different types. There are many different types out there that you can use. But this is what we will be using for now. Um, right. So the question I asked is, what is SQL? I'm going to be writing these things down as we go along, right? And somebody said it is structured query language. Reason why I'm writing it down is so that it serves as notes for you as so that you have something to refer to after the class. Now, what do you think um, SQL is in terms of programming languages? Would you say SQL is a programming language?
I'll say yeah. I'll say it is
Why would you say so?
because you just mentioned something about coding. So I think wouldn't you be trying to extract information from somewhere using strings? I'll say.
Okay. Extract information using strings. Not necessarily strings. Yeah, but yes, we would use strings. Yeah, actually, yeah. That's SQL is a programming language, but it is used in manipulating relational databases. Used in manipulating relational databases. And I would explain that. Relational. Who knows what a relational database is? First of all, who knows what a database is? What is a database?
Is it storage of information?
Pardon?
A storage of information.
A storage of information. Yeah, it's a database. Yeah. An information store. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. Can you give us some examples?
That's a good question. Azure, is it Azure DevOps? No. Do you need like as an information or
No, database. Can you give us examples of databases?
database? That's a good question.
Pardon?
No, you put me on the spot. I can't think now.
No. There are lots of them. Even around you.
So is Salesforce a database?
Salesforce, yeah, it's a database.
Yes.
Oracle.
Yeah. Your hospital records, NHS records, school records, a restaurant menu, right? All these things are databases. Any store of information, any store of data is a database. But whether it is relational or non-relational is the issue here, right? Now, when we say a database is relational, who understands what that means?
Like when you store data in like table.
Oh, beautiful. Somebody is coming up with some beautiful language. Are you one of the 1.5s?
No, I'm zero. I'm actually making research as I'm talking. That's all.
Oh, okay. You're making, okay. So that's good. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just said it like when you store data in like table formats.
Okay. So data stored in, so for relational databases, the data would usually be stored in table formats. Now, these tables would normally also be related one to the other. So you can have one table related to many tables, or many tables related to one table, right? We'll go into if time permits, we will go into the schema of relational databases. Then we have non-relational databases. Non-relational, who knows an example of non-relational database? Yep. What's non-relational database? Can we have some examples? Or what is a non-relational database? Let me rephrase. Non-relational database. What is that?
Basically, like any data that is not stored in a table format.
Beautiful. Any data that is just anywhere, haphazard.
Yeah.
It's just anywhere, lumped up together without any regular formation. Right? Without any regular formation. Can you give us examples?
Yeah, unstructured, like when you store data in an unstructured format, like documents, graphs, objects.
Are you reading for me?
Like I said, I'm making research.
Oh, it's the same person, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, same person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So you're not wrong at all. So these are this kind of database, non-relational databases are databases that are not structured. They are usually lumped together and could be all over the place. You could take an example as telephone conversation or even this call we are on. Every word that I say here or that we say, if we are recording, right? Yeah, we are recording this session. So this recording here, in a sense, is a database. We are forming a database of today's lecture. But is the lecture, are our words, is the lecture in any way of shape or form within the database structured? No. The words are just being lumped together. They are not structured in any way, shape, or form. Right? The same thing if you have a telephone conversation and your telephone conversation is stored somewhere on a server somewhere. It is not in any structured table. Same way, if you log onto your Facebook and you do your stuff on Facebook, all that information you are putting on Facebook is not structured. Simply because it cannot be structured. It's so haphazard that it can't be structured. All the photographs, the pictures, the videos, all those things that you do, right? Now, these kind of databases would usually be what are called NoSQL. Have you heard the term NoSQL? Who's heard that term before? So we have SQL,
Yes.
and then we have NoSQL, okay? An example of this is the database that is called MongoDB. So that's one example, right? So let me write a few things down. Or should we just discuss? I can send you the notes as we progress. Okay, I'll send you the notes. No worries. So MongoDB and NoSQL are examples of non-relational databases. Sales data, hospital records, school records, attendance, restaurants, like I said earlier on, all those things relational, they can be formed into tables, they can be put into tables. The data in those databases can be grouped into tables and form all databases. Now, we are not going to look at non-relational databases at all in this how should I call it, for this your period. It's 3 weeks or so that you'll be, or 10 weeks or so that you'll be studying. We're not going to look at that at all. Just for you to know that there exists that whole relational database, and for you to know what it is, and for you to be able to give examples if and when you are called. So we are going to be focusing on relational database. Now, cases basically are managed by systems that we call the systems. Data management systems. So they are managed by database management systems. Now, what are some of these database management systems? One of them is what I am writing, SQL Studio. We have also DB2. We have PostgreSQL.
SQL Server.
Pardon?
Microsoft SQL Server.
MySQL. MySQL. they are there, all of them. There are quite a few of the other ones. What we will add, I'm sure what Mr. Emmanuel would also recommend for you is this one here. Reason being that this is very, very robust. And it's robust, it's very easy to use. SQL Server Management, that too. So it's not like you don't have revisions of the other ones. But yeah, it's quite robust. Next thing is let's now look a little bit more about SQL. Let's look at SQL proper, right? SQL. Like we said from the beginning, it is a programming language for manipulating and managing relational databases. So SQL is a programming language in the first place. What is it used for? It is used for managing and manipulating relational databases, not non-relational databases, right? That is what SQL is used for. It is a very portable language. And when I say portable, what does it mean? Who can tell us when we say a language or something is a language is portable? What does it mean? Come on, somebody.
Is it
I have helpers on this in this group, don't I? Yes. Yes, somebody wanted to say something.
is it like easily transferable? I'm only going by it saying being
Oh,
portable.
so when you say transferable, what exactly are you referring to?
Is it like on the cloud?
Yeah, you
Or
can
my
do
office?
SQL on the cloud, I'm sure, but that does not necessarily mean it's portable.
Yeah, no, I was just guessing, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So you see all these management studios that we have here, management frameworks that we have, SSMS, DB2, PostgreSQL, MySQL, etc. Now, none of these things would discriminate against the language. None of these database management systems would discriminate against the language. The language would work very well, seamlessly on all of these systems. So it doesn't matter which of these systems you use in a study, you know how to use it in one, you know how to use it in all, more or less, right? With a few exceptions, I think between MySQL, where there are slight syntax changes, but those ones are insignificant. And obviously, of course, it would actually even tell you what to do, right? So SQL is very, very portable. It's a portable language. Now, categories of the language. Apart from the fact that it's portable, there are also various categories of this language. What are these categories? So the programming language itself is called SQL, right? Structured Query Language, but it has its own subsets, which make up the totality of SQL. Now, the first one is Data Query Language. Data Query Language. The next one is data definition language. Data definition language. Then we have data manipulation language. Then we have data control language. And finally, we have transaction control language. Language. Okay, so these are the different. Can you see my screen though? Can you see what I'm typing?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Right, cool. So these are the 5 subsets of SQL. Data query language, data definition language, data manipulation language, data control language, and transaction control language. So this, we can say the short form of this will be DQL, right? DQL, this one would be, can we have some, what do you think this one will be used for? I think the answer would be in the name. What do you think this will be used for? Okay, let me give you an example of this. Let me tell you what this is used for. So this is used in querying data. Querying data. And data definition language. DFL. What do you think this is used for?
Defining data.
Right. So used in defining and modifying data. Defining and modifying. Data manipulation language. What do you think this is used for?
Based on the name again, manipulating.
I like that. So this is used in managing data. Managing means manipulates. If you are a manager, in fact, do managers not manipulate people to work? They use tricks. That's management is an art of trickery, isn't it? Get your people to do more, to produce more, to work harder, right? So used in managing data within a schema. Managing. Did I get the spelling right? Within. So when I say schema, do we know what that is? We will come to that anyway. No rush. Data control language, DCL. What is this used for? Yep. Can somebody help us? And this time I want it to be precise. Don't just tell me used in controlling data. No. I want something more precise. I'm kind of testing you now. I've put one word there. I've given you a prefix to another word. Used for access privileges. And then we have transaction control language. TCL. What is this used for? Yep. Used for managing transactions within a database. Now we will see what all of these, we will see examples of these. We'll see the how these things work. It's not like we are going to use all of these 5 categories. In fact, we might just be focusing on one during this training, 3 months or so training session. We'll just be focusing on one of these. So data query language, like I said, is used in querying data, right? Now, each of these categories of SQL, each one has got its own set of keywords, which is used in carrying out the tasks that's it's supposed to carry out. Now, for data query languages, to query data, the keyword there is the select keyword. Select. Select keyword. For data definition language, the keywords are create, alter, and drop. So create, for example, is used in creating a database or creating tables. Alter is used in making changes. And drop is one that if you happen to work anywhere on any database, I would advise you to not use unless explicitly directed to do so. Drop, let me repeat that. For anyone who will be working on a database, the keyword drop is one that you should not attempt to use unless you have been expressly advised, instructed, and probably you have that instruction in written form to use. Reason being that once you drop anything from a database, it is gone forever. Now, the keywords for the third. Here we also have select here as one of the words. Data manipulation. In fact, select is the main word here. We have insert. we have update, and we have delete. So select is used to, as you know, the meaning of the word select. To select means what? Who can give me a synonym for select? Somebody to give us a synonym for select.
Pick.
Pick. To pick, yeah. To pick. Exactly. So that is simply what it does, actually. That is what it does. Insert, like the name implies, is used in what? Imputing data into a database. Update, like the name implies, is used slightly different from insert, but it's used in updating, making slight changes, not fully inserting, but making slight changes to a database. Delete is used in deleting certain attributes from a database. It is slightly different from drop. Drop is a more drastic action than delete. So whilst you may delete something and you can retrieve, when you drop, you've dropped, and you've dropped completely and totally. Right. The next one, access privileges. The keywords here are grant and revoke. So for example, when you joined BlueSky Citadel, right? How many of you work on, how many of you have access to Azure DevOps? Or how many of you have access even to Teams? We all have access to Teams, right? That's good. Goodness says she's got us access to Azure DevOps. That's good. Yeah. Now, before you can access the framework, or before you could access the framework, what did you have? What was done? What do you think was done? I'm not sure. I've forgotten now how it worked then. But were you sent an email and then you accepted, and then or you had to send your email for the Scrum Master to add you, right?
Yes.
Right. So what the Scrum Master did at that point was to grant you access privilege to that framework, to that database. Now, the Scrum Master, after you have finished, can decide to maintain your privilege or to revoke it. Now, when it is revoked, then you cease to have access to that particular resource. Is that clear? Now the next one, or the last one. Used in managing transactions. I didn't finish this. Used in managing transactions within a database. A database. I'll send you the full notes on this Assam. I'll send you the full notes. These are just bullet points that we have. Right. So the keywords here are commit. Okay, let me test you a little bit on this one. When you go to Sainsbury's or Tesco's or any shop to buy something, you get to the till. The cashier has scanned your items, what is the next thing to be done before you are able to take your items?
But as in that, pay for them?
You make payment.
Pay for them. Exactly. That's just what I was looking for. Pay for them. Pay for them. Now, so that at that point when you are paying for them, you are committing to that transaction. You are committing to the purchase, right? Now, if you have bought an item or you bought a number of items, and then after buying, you realize that no, you didn't need a particular item, what would you normally do?
Are you talking like by
Return
the
it.
till side? Yeah,
Pardon?
just return it. You just tell the cashier that you don't want it no more, right? And then you could just
Okay,
return
you
it.
tell the cashier you don't want it no more. Beautiful. And then what would the cashier do?
Remove it.
Remove it? Not just
Just
remove
from
it.
the item and delete it.
Okay, so when the cashier has removed it, what does the cashier do? No,
Delete it from the-
let's go back. Let's get this straight. You have paid for the item, right?
Okay.
Let's assume you have even moved away from the till. Let's just assume that to make it a little bit clearer. You've moved away from the till. You've gone 5-10 minutes. Then you realize that you didn't need a particular item. What do you do?
Do you make a return?
Okay, you make a return. You make a return. Now, that return may not necessarily be at that point where you made the payment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But with your receipt, whoever you give the receipt to would be able to have sight of what you have bought and the item you want to return, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think they would do so as to effect your return?
Record the transaction.
Pardon?
Record the transaction.
Record the transaction.
Record, yes.
Recall.
Record the
Okay,
transaction.
recall. Did you say recall?
Record the transaction, yes.
Is it RECALL or?
Yes.
Okay, recall the transaction. So that means they are recalling the whole transaction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then what will they do after that?
Then after that, after the transaction has been recorded, they'll have to make the necessary adjustment to remove that particular one.
To remove that particular item, right?
Yes, and delete
Okay.
it.
Can anybody at all give me just one word for that singular action? Or the actions involving the returning of the item, recalling the transaction, removing that item from the transaction, and then refunding your money to you. Can somebody give me just one word? You've used it several times.
The revert.
You're very
Refund?
close, but I wouldn't know. It wouldn't be revert.
Okay.
Very close.
It won't be refund?
No, I've already used refund. I said the whole process of the refund, the whole refund process.
Reverse.
No. Okay, let me give you that. It's called a rollback. So in SQL terms, that is referred to as a rollback. Rollback. Right, so these are the different categories of SQL we've looked at. We've looked at their keywords. We've looked at their keywords. Now let us look at what other things that SQL is made up of. There are two main types of words in the SQL language. Two main types. One of them is reserved words. And user-defined words. Reserved words and user-defined words. What are reserved words?
I think like keywords or prompts for the database or SQL to recognize.
Okay. Yep, that's a good try. That's a very good try. But can you break it down for someone, assuming you are explaining that to someone who's just gotten to year 7? Okay, let me tell you what it is. So these reserved words, basically, they are a fixed part of the language. They have a fixed meaning and must be spelled exactly as required. So the reserved words, now, okay, all these words we have used here, and there are a few more. All these ones here are reserved words, right? They are all reserved words. So, for example, if I want to write create and I omit the E, it is not going to work. Right? That's simply what I'm trying to say. So these reserved words are a fixed part of the SQL language. They are part of the language. They have a fixed meaning, like we have just seen here. We've tried to explain some of these words. They have a fixed meaning. They must be spelled as required, and also they cannot be split across lines. Right, so when I say split across lines, what does that mean? Let me take the word rollback. If I were to write this, rollback, this is not going to work. Split across lines, it is not going to work, right? So assuming you're writing an SQL statement and you get to the end of the line, assuming you're writing an SQL statement, you get to the end of the line, right? Naturally, what do? We tend to put a hyphen and then we continue on the next line, isn't it? To show that we are continuing on the next line. You can't do that if you are dealing with a key word or a reserved word. You cannot do that. It's not allowed. All right? Now, user-defined words are different. User-defined words are flexible. They are introduced by the user. They represent whatever it is that the user wants them to represent within the database. So they can be used in representing various objects in the database. They can be used in representing the various attributes, the various fields, the various columns, the various views, whatever it is the user wants them to represent, that is how, that is what they would represent. So those words have no restrictions. They can be spelled whichever way you want to spell them. The only thing with them with this is that once you've spelled them in a first instance in a particular way, for example, if you've spelled an attribute, let's assume that you spelled an attribute as keyword, right? You spelled an attribute as keyword. Okay, make sure it is keyword all the time. You cannot, for example, say whichever way you want, you represent it, but you cannot, for example, let me see if I can. Okay, let's say we have keywords, right? And then at another point, another place, go and write keyword. These would not work either. So if you've started representing your user-defined words as keywords, a particular user-defined word, right? That's what I mean now. As keywords, for example, it must be maintained keywords throughout the database. You cannot chop and change, okay? And I think that is called literals. So you cannot, you have written a literal particular way, it must be maintained that in the same way. So user-defined words. SQL statements, the whole SQL statement or all SQL are case sensitive. Case sensitive. So for example, I write select as this. I can also write it as that, and it should work perfectly fine. It should work perfectly fine. Because of this, SQL is described as a free format language. It's free format. However, there are a few rules which need to be observed. I think I've already mentioned one of the rules, like split across lines, splitting a keyword across lines. That cannot be done, right? There are a few rules which we will look at. Rule number 1. Rule number 1. Each clause in the statement should begin on a new line. Each clause, just write this in short form, right? Each clause starts on new line, right? That's rule number 1. Rule number 2. The beginning of each clause should line up with the beginning of other clauses. So, for example, let's look at this, the way I wrote this, for example. I didn't follow any format here, but I'm just trying to use this as an example. Forget about the numbering here, right? Let's assume that these here were SQL statements, which they are not. These are not SQL statements. These are just notes, right? But let's briefly assume that these were SQL statements. What I'm trying to explain in Rule 2 is at the beginning of each clause. The first clause is that each clause should start on a new line, right? Okay. So this line is different from that line. This says something, one thing, this one says another thing. That's the first rule. The second rule is that the beginning of each clause should line up with the beginning of other clauses. So this clause here lines up with that, lines up with that, lines up with that. Where a clause is indented within another clause, then that indented clause becomes a sub-clause, a subordinate of the previous one. Okay? So the beginning of each clause should line up with other clauses. Rule number 3. If a clause has several parts, they should each appear on a separate line. If a clause, that's just what I tried to explain now. If a clause has several parts, they should each appear on a separate line and be indented under the start of the clause to show the relationship. So let's assume that this clause here, let's assume again, let's assume this is a clause, right? And that is also a clause. Let's make a further assumption that these two clauses are related, right? That's a further assumption that these two clauses are related. If I want to write these two clauses, then this becomes a subordinate clause. It is indented under that one. So whenever you see this here, this, for example, shows that this clause here is related to that, is a subordinate clause of that one. This clause here is a subordinate clause of that. Okay? Again, so that is rule 3. I'll send you the notes for that. So let me not waste time writing everything. Right. So these are the few rules. These are the few rules for subclause indented under parent clause. For the purpose of this study, we will be looking mainly at data manipulation. I'm not sure if you have already been told, but I am sure Mr. Emmanuel would have mentioned it to you, that as data analysts, you do not own the data. Has he mentioned that to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It is very important that that understanding is made very, very clear. You do not own the data. When you go into a company or a business, you are given data to use. You have nothing to do with how that data is acquired. You have nothing to do with updating, creating, inserting, deleting, granting, revoking. You have nothing at all whatsoever to do with those things. Right? Your role as a data analyst is to be given data. You look at the data. If the data requires cleaning, you clean it. You transform the data with a view to drawing upwards insights into the data for management use. You have no business whatsoever to change the format of the data. Right? Which is why most of these categories of SQL will not be what we will be studying. And in fact, these categories, this is quite a huge thing. You can't even study one of these categories within the period that we have. Right? But we will make the best of it. That is why I said that let's hope to get you to 3 out of 5. Yeah. So what we will be looking at mainly is data manipulation. And even with data manipulation, okay, let me say data manipulation and data query. But let's come more on the data manipulation. Right. Like we already know, these are the data manipulation keywords. But quite honestly, we are only going to use one of these keywords. And who can guess which one it is?
Select.
Select. That is all that you are, as a data analyst, that is all that you are concerned with. You are not concerned with inserting anything into the database. You are not concerned with updating the database. You are not concerned with deleting anything whatsoever from the database. If they want you to do that, inserting things will be for maybe the data engineer, right? These will be the people who would be doing those things. Now, these are the most commonly used SQL commands. These are most common. They are used more than any other ones, particularly the select command. This command is SQL keyword. There is no other keyword here that is used more than select. Everything that you do in a database or within a database starts with select. with a few exceptions, of course. So the select keyword is the most commonly used keyword, right? So let's look at the general format of the select keyword. The general format of the select keyword. Hi. Welcome. Did you see him? Okay, cool. Thank you. Right. So what is the format like? The format of the select keyword is like this. Select. Now, what are you selecting? There are options for selection. You can either select, okay, let me just give you the format. We will do the explanation when we start working with, when we really start next week. So you can either select all or select specific items. Briefly, let me just give you a brief explanation. So when you say select all or select distinct, select all means select everything, or select distinct, select specific things, right? So when you say select, you must have somewhere you are selecting from. So this is the format that has to be followed. This format must be strictly followed in an uncompromising way, right? You select from. You select from. We did mention right from the beginning that relational databases are made up of what? Tables, right? Which are related. That is why it's called relational database. So you select something, either everything or specific things from a table or from tables, right? You must give the table name. You must name the table. The table would have a name. So for example, if we have sales data, for example, if we have sales data, we could have product table. We could have manufacturers table. We could have price tables, right? Within a sales database. You could decide when you have chosen a table, and this is very common practice in SQL, to give it an alias. Alias. Did I spell that right? Alias. I think I did. I believe we all know what an alias is, right? Do we all know what an alias is? I believe, right? Come on, somebody help me. We know, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, what's an alias?
A nickname.
A nickname. Yep, a nickname. I like that. So who just spoke?
Bingbe.
Bigbe, do you have a nickname?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool. Would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I know.
Am I pulling your legs?
Why not? I can share.
Okay. Not to worry, so we all know what an alias is. That's just the point that I'm trying to make. So you select something or everything from a table, which you can decide, you don't have to give a nickname or an alias. And then when you have selected those things, you can put some restrictions on the selections. And that is where the keyword where comes in. Where. So where is a condition? These are conditions. So having selected your items or whatever it is that you need from a table, and you've placed conditions on them so as to have a particular view of or a particular representation. If you are going to present these things to this information to management, you wouldn't just present it in any, you would not just present it anyhow, right? You would group the information in in a specific manner so as to have what? Meaning, wouldn't you? So then we have also a group by. Group by. Then we have having. Having is all condition. So group by, this is column list. Having some conditionalities. And finally, we have order by. Order by. Now, basically, order by is whether or not you want your data or the information that you're presenting be maybe in ascending or descending order, right? And this is also by column list. Right, so let's say a little bit about these terms that we have used here. From. We use the word from. As I said, this format needs to be followed. There are no two ways about it. You have to, when you are writing your queries, you have to start with select, then from, where, group by, having, order by. This format must be followed. You do not necessarily have to use all of these. The two mandatory ones, or the mandatory ones, are these first two. Select and from. These are mandatory. Select and from. The other ones you would use as and when necessary. And you don't need to use everything. You can use, you can have this first three. And then as time progresses, depending on what you are doing, you can have add-ons. Okay, like that. So the from keyword specifies the table or tables to be used in your select command. The where keyword is a filter. It filters rows subject to the condition you've placed there. The group by forms groups of rows with the same column value. Now, we did mention that having is also a condition, right? Having is another condition, and that's one filters the group subject to some condition. So where filters rows, group by having will filter a group, right? Where would filter rows. Having will filter a group. That's the difference between these two. This one filters rows. Having filters groups. All these will become clear when we start actually writing commands. Whilst order by, like I said, that one is pretty straightforward. Either ascending or descending, either ascending or descending order. Order of this format can change. Followed. And only the first two are mandatory. So you cannot start from and then bring select. It will not work. You have to write your select command before your from command. Right? Any questions? I said 1.5 hours. I'm happy I have achieved that. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Notes? It's detailed than this. So this time just okay, if there are no questions, let me see if I ask a question. So in my SQL, if I want to write an SQL statement, must I capitalize all my characters?
No.
Why?
It's not case sensitive.
It's not case sensitive. Good. Yeah, it's not case sensitive.
Unnecessary.
Somebody wants to say something? So if I'm writing a group of clauses, SQL clauses that are related, how must I write them?
Do you write them on different lines?
Pardon?
Do you have to write them on different lines?
Yeah, related clauses. Did you ask a question or you're answering the question?
Sorry, I was answering. It sounded, or I worded it as a question, but it's actually an answer.
Okay, yeah, you write them on. How do you write as related?
As subclauses.
Okay, so how will you write the subclause?
Indent the one that's
It has to
related.
be. It has to be indented.
Yes.
It has to be indented. And different clauses have to be written one under another, right? The same level of indentation. Okay, we will stop here for today. Hopefully by next week you should have your SSMS set up. And then we can, even if you don't have, can start writing something. But I'm hoping that you would have been given a database so that we can start using. I have the database, though. I have that database already, and even if you don't have, we can still. There we go. So I'm sure you'll be given this database here. This one. So once you have it, then we can start doing something. We'll mix it up with my ones. So I have 3 databases here. 1, 2, 3. We'll mix it up with my ones. But mainly, we'll start off with probably with my ones and then mix it up with AdventureWorks. Okay? If there are no questions, I would bring this call to a close because I have another meeting actually already started.
Thank you.
So I'll be seeing you next week Friday, yeah? Who should I say this to? Who's been posting on your chat? Who does the posting? Do you have a nominated rep?
No.
No? Okay,
No.
maybe I'll post it, but it will be good. So, for example, who will be posting this recording to the chat?
That would be me. Or Bingpei.
Who just said that will be